All right, let's just dive right into this. Welcome to This Explainer, where today we are going to be completely peeling back the layers on a truly fascinating and honestly a somewhat terrifying case study. We're looking at the absolute dark side of corporate mentorship. Now, we have all heard the standard office buzzwords, right? Things like synergy, growth, culture building, upskilling. But what actually happens when those exact positive words are weaponized against the very people they are supposed to help? Well, today, we are deconstructing workplace betrayal. We're going to examine a story where a seemingly progressive, forward-thinking initiative was, in reality, a carefully constructed shield for systemic exploitation. If you've ever worked in an office where the brightly colored values printed on the break room wall don't quite match the gritty reality on the ground, well, you are definitely going to want to pay really close attention to this one. I want you to just listen to this quote for a second. Silence never felt peaceful anymore. It felt like someone holding their breath. That observation comes from Bennett. She's a project strategist who was trying to navigate the messy fallout of a previous office scandal. And I just want to let that land for a moment because it's so powerful. It brilliantly and almost poetically captures the sheer psychological tension of an office that is supposedly in the middle of recovering from past cover-ups. Think about it. When trust is completely broken in a workplace, the absence of noise isn't harmony. It's not people just quietly doing their jobs. It's anticipation. It is the raw anxiety of waiting for the other shoe to drop. You aren't relaxed, you are literally bracing for impact. And that exact tension brings us to a really uncomfortable but absolutely crucial question. What happens when a company's shiny new mentorship program is actually just a sophisticated cover for corporate betrayal? I mean, have you ever seen a toxic management team attempt to rebrand a full-blown crisis as a learning opportunity? It's a brilliant, albeit completely manipulative sleight of hand. You take the exact thing that your junior people are genuinely craving, real guidance, career growth, a genuine investment in their future, and you use it as a Trojan horse. It looks like a gift, but inside, it's something entirely different. So let's look at exactly how this trap was set. Part 1. The setup. Disguising cleanup as growth. Okay, so we are introduced to Rebecca Sloan. She's a manager who recently launched this shiny, highly publicized new mentorship initiative. Internally, this was heavily sold as a massive positive culture shift. Now, to give you some context, the company had just been put through the ringer with an intense internal audit and this really messy stolen credit scandal. So at first glance, Rebecca's program looked like a much-needed breath of fresh air. It was pitched as a fast track for young, ambitious employees to gain some real-world hands-on experience. But here is the core exploitation at play, and it's pretty wild. These high-level learning tasks they were handing out, they were actually senior management's hidden cleanup work. Young, eager employees were unwittingly doing the absolute dirty work to quietly cover up the technical and operational mistakes of their superiors. They were functioning as unpaid, completely unacknowledged crisis managers. The leadership wasn't investing in their growth at all. They were literally borrowing their energy and their naivety to save their own skin. Part 2, the investigation, finding the receipts. Of course, a toxic system like this completely relies on everyone just taking things at face value and not asking too many questions. But our project strategist, Bennett, and an IT compliance specialist named Noah Grant, they decided to look a little bit past the official, sanitized narrative. They went looking for the receipts. And you have to look at this side-by-side comparison they uncovered because it's the ultimate smoking gun. On the left side, we have the official success metrics for Rebecca's highly praised brand new mentorship program. And on the right, we have a training proposal that Maya had actually submitted months earlier. A proposal, by the way, that Rebecca herself had explicitly dismissed and shot down for being too idealistic. The frameworks are identical. I mean, Rebecca didn't just copy the basic structure. She stole the very ideas she had previously rejected, rebranded them as her own brilliant initiative, and then used them to exploit the junior staff. It's just this dull gray row of spreadsheet evidence, but that is exactly what makes it so terrifying. It's so painfully calculated. As they dug deeper, Maya points out a really vital distinction here, which they call the clean pattern. By definition, a clean pattern is a series of flawlessly hidden mistakes where the actual method of hiding them reveals a deliberate, systemic strategy. The absolutely crucial point you have to understand here is this. One perfectly contained mistake might just be a lucky break or a random accident. We all make mistakes, right? But a clean pattern, a sequence of errors that neatly resolve themselves in the shadows, that requires choreography. It requires intent and coordination. That isn't an accident. That is undeniable evidence of systemic, intentional manipulation by the exact people who hold the administrative keys to the system. And when you actually map out the hidden sequence of events, like Noah and Maya did, it builds a completely undeniable case. Let's walk through this timeline together. 1 month ago, a senior leader makes a significant, reportable mistake. 2 weeks ago, the senior approval chain quietly activates behind the scenes to address it. 1 week ago, the cleanup effort is heavily sanitized in internal emails, using very specific corporate code words like contain, stabilize, and reset. And then today, a junior protégé is suddenly assigned a special, unique learning task that miraculously fixes that exact original problem. When you look at it like this, every single line points toward a very specific method, rather than some innocent misunderstanding. Part 3. The defense. Weaponizing tone. So what actually happens when you take this hard, irrefutable data and present it to a system that was specifically designed to ignore it? Well, toxic structures almost never engage with the actual facts. They can't, because they'd lose. Instead, they shift to the entire battlefield. Maya actually wrote this brilliant realization down in her notebook. When truth threatens power, tone becomes the trial. And that is exactly what happened. Rebecca's immediate response to being caught red-handed wasn't to look at the IT logs or address the stolen framework. No, she immediately scheduled a culture alignment huddle. Think about that phrasing. She used the warm, fuzzy language of healing and empathy as a literal blade. She started telling the team that trust requires accountability, and accountability includes tone. It's an incredibly dark, brilliant strategy. It's entirely designed to make the group evaluate who sounds the most difficult or who is the easiest target to punish, rather than actually evaluating the hard evidence sitting right there on the table. I mean, just take a look at this exact quote from Rebecca Sloan during that very meeting. She said, "Facts do not repair trust when people use them carelessly." Now, that is an absolute masterclass in corporate gaslighting. Do you see what she's doing there? She is actively attempting to invalidate objective reality. She's ignoring the data logs, the copy proposals, the meticulously mapped timelines entirely by criticizing the manner in which those facts were brought to light. It's the ultimate deflection. It's a convenient way for leadership to evade accountability entirely, all while hiding under the protective, unassailable guise of preserving office morale and healing the team. But right when it feels like this manipulation is going to work, an ethical team lead named Daniel Reed steps in to completely break the spell. He looks right at her and says, "No. Facts are how trust starts repairing itself." And we really need to highlight this, because you have to contrast Rebecca's slippery evasion with Daniel's firm ethical stand. It is incredibly difficult to do what Daniel did in that moment. He absolutely refused to let the conversation be derailed into some subjective, impossible-to-win debate about tone or feelings. It takes immense, visible courage to draw a hard, uncompromising line against a toxic narrative. Especially, and this is key, especially when the person spinning that narrative holds direct power over your career and your livelihood. And as this confrontation starts escalating behind those glass conference room walls, an HR partner named Olivia Park drops this absolute bombshell of an observation. She says, "Process without integrity is just choreography." I really want to slow down here and emphasize this powerful aphorism because it hits the nail right on the head. A company can have all the right policies on paper, you can have the slickest mentorship programs, the most robust reporting structures, the most beautifully designed flowcharts, but if the human beings running those systems lack basic integrity, all of those policies are literally just a coordinated dance. They are just choreography. It's a performance designed to look exactly like accountability to the outside world, while actually serving as an impenetrable shield for those hoarding power on the inside. Part 4. The resolution. Real accountability. So this incredibly intense standoff is finally broken when the CEO, Claire Morgan, actually enters the room. And she doesn't come in with some fluffy motivational speech about working together. She completely bypasses all of the emotional manipulation that Rebecca was trying to set up. She simply looks at the mapped-out data that Maya and Noah compiled, and she asks one simple, incredibly piercing question. Who benefited from every version of confusion? Boom. That right there is exactly how you cut through the thickest bureaucratic noise. When things are constantly going wrong in a department, when communication is conveniently and constantly muddled or lost in transit, you shouldn't just ask why it's confusing. You have to ask who gains power, who gains cover, or who gets a promotion out of that exact confusion. And the brilliant part? Nobody even had to answer her question, because the answer was already standing right there in the room. From there, Claire doesn't hesitate. She outlines a master blueprint for what real ethical leadership actually looks like in the middle of a crisis. Step 1, she immediately orders an independent review, totally removing the investigation from anyone who was even tangentially involved. Step 2, she freezes all disputed decisions and promotions right there on the spot. Step 3,
She explicitly and publicly protects Maya and Noah, the employees who actually took the risk to provide the evidence. And step 4, she immediately revokes system access from all the accounts that were tied to that hidden pattern. In 4 simple moves, she changes the rules of the entire game. She takes it from being a performance about tone right back to being about actual factual operation and accountability.
But honestly, perhaps Claire's most important contribution to this whole ordeal was actually naming the deeper, underlying, systemic issue that allowed this to happen in the first place. She noted it almost failed because good people learned to wait for permission to be honest. You really need to let that heavy realization sink in for a second. The real danger to this organization wasn't just Rebecca. It wasn't just one bad manager stealing credit or quietly shifting their heavy workload onto junior staff. No. The fatal threat was a deeply ingrained culture of silence. It was an environment that had systematically trained its best, most ethical people to just keep their heads down and stay quiet unless they were explicitly given permission by authority to speak the truth. And that is how corporate rot spreads.
So we're going to wrap up our explainer today by leaving you with this core thought up on the screen. Mentorship is not branding. Real leaders grow people, fake leaders borrow their energy. As you log off today and maybe take a look around your own workplace, I want you to ask yourself some tough questions. Are the programs, the training modules, and the processes around you actually designed to grow the team's capabilities, or are they just choreography? Are they just a well-rehearsed dance protecting the people at the very top? Who really benefits from the confusion in your office? It's a provocative question, for sure, but as we've clearly seen today, sometimes having the courage to ask it is the only real way to find the truth. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep your eyes open out there.